Hello, this is Play by Numbers. I like overanalyzing things and using numbers in place of letters. Enough about that. This video is about cooldown reduction. There are a few different types of people that I think this video will be useful for. Firstly, we have those who are theory crafters. Secondly, we have those who are new to the game. And thirdly, those who are used to cookie cutter builds and are trying to break away from those. What is cooldown reduction? Well, simply put, cooldown reduction, or CDR as I will refer to it for the rest of this video, lets you use your abilities more often. It's a statistic, like ability power or crit chance. However, it's notable that, unlike some of the other statistics, every class and role in LoL has an item that contains CDR in them. For example, mages have Morello's or Lich Bane, tanks have Frozen Heart or Spirit Visage, marksmen have Essence Reaver and Yo moves, melee AD casters have Death's Dance or Black Cleaver. However, just like crit chance is amazing on Jinx, but not so hot on Anivia, there are champions that CDR is super important for, and others where in general it's a waste of gold. There are three major ways in which I see players making mistakes with CDR. Firstly, we have overcapping. If you are unaware, in League of Legends, you can generally only have 40% CDR. Any extra you buy goes completely to waste. This is very simple to fix. Simply look at how much CDR you have. You can find this in the HUD by clicking on the little helmet next to the picture of your champion, and then just don't buy an item that will take you over 40%. If you take the Precision Mastery in the penultimate tier of the Cunning tree, you can get up to 45%, but the theory just stays the same. This is a really simple fix. Secondly, we have not getting enough cooldown reduction for your champion. If you're playing any of the champions listed later in this video as being good with CDR, and you're not getting a good amount, it's likely that your build is less effective than it should be. And finally, we have not having enough raw stats for your champion. This one I think is honestly most prevalent within lower elos, where people are playing the game more so for fun, and they're getting cooldown items because, hey, it lets you use your abilities more often, which makes the game more fun. But what needs to be realised is that often it's better to land one good spell than two weaker ones. Ultimately, when you're thinking about your builds in regards to cooldown reduction, you need to be thinking two things. Firstly, do I need cooldown reduction? And secondly, when do I need it? So first, let's define a few types of champions. Firstly, let's look at cooldown reduction hyperscalers, or CDR hyperscalers. So let's define CDR hyperscalers as champions that have flat cooldown reduction decreases in their kit. For these champions, cooldown reduction becomes much more important for increasing potential damage and effectiveness. Let's consider Ezreal's Q as an example. Upon hitting a target with this spell, all of Ezreal's cooldowns reduce by 1.5 seconds. So a late game Ezreal with no CDR can be shooting out a Q every 3 seconds. With 40% CDR, this becomes every 1.2 seconds. We expect the potential damage increase with 40% CDR to be approximately 67%. But in Ezreal's case, it's instead 150%. Some other champions, like Zac, Thresh, and Gragas, also hyperscale on their W, Q, and E respectively. Hopefully you can see why CDR might be considered so strong on these champions. It's also worth noting that champions like Annie and Hecarim, who have percentage cooldown reduction on their abilities, do not hyperscale with cooldown reduction. Now, there is another thing to consider along with flat cooldown reductions within the champion's kit. Downtime on abilities can be just as important. Consider Kayle. Now, without CDR, Kayle's E, Righteous Fury, has a 16-second cooldown. However, it lasts for 10 seconds, meaning that when it ends, you'll have a 6-second period before you can use it again. Consider her instead with 40% CDR. Her E now has a 9.6-second cooldown and a 10-second uptime period. So that means her downtime is 0 seconds for her E.
In fact, Kayle is a CDR pseudo-hyperscaler, in that the downtime of her E's effect is reduced in a greater sense than the actual ability's cooldown is reduced.
Kayle only actually needs 37.5% CDR in order to have her E permanently up, so Kayle builds almost always will make space for CDR relatively early.
Riven also has a similar effect. When fighting her, you want to avoid putting damage into her shield, and may not actually be able to penetrate through it. At max rank of her E, with no CDR, her shield has a downtime of 4.5 seconds. With maximum cooldown reduction, it has a downtime of 2.1 seconds, less than half of that of the original. So whilst the percentage time shielded is only increased by the expected 67%, the downtime is massively reduced. This is also the reason why almost all supports will buy CDR, because their stuns, shields, polymorphs and the like also pseudo-hyperscale. Both CDR hyperscalers and CDR pseudo-hyperscalers pair very well with cooldown reduction, and you will almost always need to ensure that your full build has a good amount. There are, however, some other factors at play here. Firstly, due to the semi-discrete nature of LoL, CDR may not actually increase your damage per second. For example, Evelyn's spammable Q is likely to gain the expected damage boost from CDR, as she'll be able to use it multiple times throughout a fight. Consider instead Karthus ult. No matter how much CDR you have, you're only going to be able to use it once in a teamfight, so its late game damage is unaffected by CDR. Some champions have breakpoints where they need a certain amount of CDR to use certain interactions within their kit. For example, Echo needs 20% CDR to proc his passive with 2 Qs. Jarvan, with enough cooldown reduction, can use one flag to Q2 twice, and Zed becomes able to Q twice from one shadow. With these cases, you'll likely want at least the amount of CDR required for that interaction, but beyond that, there's more flexibility. You may choose to build differently depending on what you want from your champion. For example, whilst Ashe usually rushes a more damage route, she may instead be the main initiator for her team and choose Essence Reaver for that cooldown reduction. Champions with high base damages and low damage scalings are likely to get cooldown reduction instead of AD or AP, in order to use those bases more often. Roaming and ganking can make CDR more attractive as well. For example, Wukong top generally rushes damage and sustain stats, as he focuses on trading to win lane. Jungle Wukong is more likely to get CDR early, as his ganks are really only effective when he has his ultimate. Resource management is also a huge factor. If you don't have the mana to actually use your spells, your cooldown reduction means very little. This is one of the reasons you'll see people say that CDR is more useful on resourceless champions. Are the cooldown reduction items actually good on me? Look at the items with cooldown reduction and decide whether the rest of the item is actually good on you. For example, Zac hyperscales with CDR, but tank CDR items, like Frozen Heart, are inefficient on him due to their mana component. In this scenario, CDR runes are a great option to have. One thing I read quite often is that CDR is really good on champions with self-healing abilities, like Warwick Q, and I want to debunk that a bit. The theory goes that the more often you're healing, the longer you'll be able to live, which means you'll be able to heal more, etc., into sort of a snowball effect. I could do a whole video on this, but for a few simulations, 40% CDR only increases your expected time spent alive by about 20%, and it seems in general, a bigger health pool and resistances are far more important to remaining alive. So, when should I not be getting CDR? If you don't have any of the purposes above for it, then it's potentially better to get other stats over CDR. In fact, cooldown reduction can often be entirely wasted on your champion. Yasuo's E and Q are unaffected by cooldown reduction, so it is in general a useless stat on him. In a way that is entirely the converse of why cooldown reduction is so good on CDR hyperscalers, champions with long cast times are also less efficient with CDR. A good example of this is surprisingly Reven's ultimate, at least the second component of it, Wind Slash. At max rank with no cooldown reduction, you may throw Wind Slash every 75 seconds. With max CDR, it's every 51 seconds. If you do the math on this, this is equivalent of only having about 32% cooldown reduction. So, now we've looked at what makes CDR effective and less effective on champions, let's look at some examples. Firstly, Karthus. Now, he does have a spammable Q, but it's highly affected by cast time, so that makes CDR less effective on him. His W has a long cooldown, so you're unlikely to be able to use it more than once in a fight. The same is true for his ultimate. His E is a toggled ability and has no effect from CDR. And finally, he has great mana requirement, which means he needs to be rushing mana instead of CDR. Due to all of these things, CDR is generally considered weak on Karthus. In fact, unless you're going for some kind of ult on cooldown playstyle during the laning phase, you shouldn't be building it on him. Even if you are doing this build, it'll likely fall off compared to its counterparts. On the other hand, consider Zac. He hyperscales with CDR on his W, but this is maxed last. He doesn't need CDR or any other stats in fact to jungle. His ganks are unaffected by CDR due to the fact that his E has a long cooldown and is really his entire kit when it comes to ganking. Spit Massage is considered core on him, but the other tank CDR items are weak, meaning he is likely to only get 10% CDR from his builds. So, since he doesn't need CDR early, but he very much wants it late, and his items don't generally give it to him, he really wants to be taking scaling CDR runes. This helps a lot with late game team fighting.